Hey there, it's Mr. Payton. Thank you so much for watching this help video. This is going to be all about the lesson that's on your plan Friday, November 4th, which is 3.07, divide a decimal by a whole number. There's no quiz for this lesson, and we don't have a live class connect, so made this 15-minute help video. Gonna try to keep it under 15 minutes. Let me flip the camera around so we can get started. All right, so dividing a decimal by a whole number. What's the difference between a divisor and a dividend? They sound very similar, don't they? A little bit of vocabulary for division, whether it's with decimals or without. The number that you're dividing up is called a dividend. The number that you're dividing it by is called a divisor. So in this case, if you're doing 16 divided by 8, you can set it up like this. 16 would be the dividend, the divisor would be 8, and the result of a division problem is always called a quotient. Let's keep that in mind because we really kind of have to go back to long division, regular long division, to learn how to do long division with decimals. Dividing a decimal by whole numbers is just like dividing two whole numbers except for where the decimal is placed. And I have a little bit of extra help in your OneNote, which I'll talk about in a second, on regular division. But this lesson doesn't have a quiz. Please make sure you have every part of the lesson checked off. Even if it doesn't show up on the My Schedule page as checked off, when you click into the course and go to the content link, you should definitely be able to see your check marks. And that way you're prepared for what comes next week with when we get into like dividing a decimal by a decimal. So the goal today is I can divide a decimal by a whole number. In the OneNote, I put a couple of extra Khan Academy videos just on regular long division for you guys, because many people need a reminder on the steps on how to do that. So you got to be able to divide by two-digit numbers, and there's a link in there. Just check out the links I have in the OneNote. These Khan Academy videos actually are linked to a whole set of other ones with similar examples worked out, more like on the 5th grade level, but could help tee you up for being more successful with the stuff we're doing here in 6th grade. Dividing a decimal by a whole number, a lot like dividing regular whole numbers. The difference is just placing the decimal point in the quotient right above where it is in the dividend. Like here, if we're doing 99 and 2/10 divided by 8, we just pretend like the decimal's sort of not there. We pretend like we're doing 992 divided by 8 and put the decimal point right up above where it lies there in the dividend. So let's look at this first one. If we are doing 99 and 2/10 divided by 8, let's just pop the decimal point right there right now. There it is in the quotient before we even did any math. So the standard steps for long division, and I know there are multiple different ways to do long division. In fact, when we get to, we have a long division lesson coming up. And the way they show you how to do it in the K-12 lesson pages. This is in Unit 1. We're doing the units out of order, but you have like a regular long division lesson coming up soon where they show you kind of a different way of doing it, different than how I like to do it. So I'm going to show you my way, just because it's my favorite and I think it's very efficient and it's kind of the traditional way to do it. So I asked myself, digit by digit, how many times can I fit the divisor into the dividend here? So I start with 9. How many times can I fit 8 into 9? Just one time. Put a 1 up there. Fits in there one time. 1 times 8 is 8. And I have 1 left over. And I bring down my 9 here. So if I'm just pretending, let's just forget about the decimal point for a minute. I'm pretending like I'm trying to see how many times I can fit 8 into 992. By figuring out this first step, I'm really sort of saying that I could fit it in there at least 100 times, but I have some remaining. So I could fit it in there at least 100 times, but I have some remaining. But in my opinion, well, I just don't like to put in the K-12 lesson pages. You guys will see they put zeros there and then they cross them out. I like to just leave it blank up there, do it step by step. A 1 will go in that place. 1 times 8 is 8. 9 minus 8 is 1. Bring down the 9. And now we're seeing how many times we could fit 8 into 19. 8 fits into 19 2 times, right? Because 8 times 2 is 16. Let's put a 2 there. 8 times 2 is 16. And what's remaining is 19 minus 16 is 3. Bring down the next digit, the 2. 8 fits into 32. How many times? 4 times, I think, right? Because 8 times 4 is 32 exactly. And so I'll just put my 4 there. 4 times 8, 32. And I'm done with no remainders. We're not going to be having any remainders with these problems with decimals. They're always going to come to an end at some point. And we'll do some stuff with remainders when we get to the regular long division. But this is just like if I did 992 divided by 8 without the decimal point, the answer would have been 124. The decimal point, the only thing we have to remember is to place it right up above in the quotient, right where it lies there in the dividend. Okay, so let's try this one. How many times does 4 fit into 2.8? So this is 2 8/10 divided by 4. 2 8/10 is the dividend. 4 is the divisor. If I were, let me just kind of sidetrack this for a second and just do it over here. If I were doing how many times does 4 fit into 28, it's going to be basically the same thing. The 4 doesn't fit into 2 at all, right? Nothing goes there. You could put a 0 there or a little x. 4 doesn't fit into 2. 4 fits into 28 7 times though, right? Because 4 times 7 is 28. This is where remembering everything on your multiplication table really comes in handy. You know, if it occurs to you quickly that 4 times 7 is 28, then you can get this relatively quickly. So I put my 7 there. 7 times 4 is 28. There's no remainder. It'll work out the same way with the decimal point, only there'll be a decimal point there right before the 7. 4 doesn't fit into 2 at all, so we could put a 0 there. In fact, it makes more sense to put it there when we're dealing with a decimal number like that. But 4 does fit into 28 7 times. And so a 7 goes there and we're done. Okay, let's look at this one. A square has a perimeter of 14 4/10 inches. What's the length of each of the sides? We need to realize a couple things here when they throw a question at us like this. We got to realize a square has 4 sides, right? And we need to realize that a perimeter is the measurement of the length around the square. So like if we have a square like so, the perimeter would be the measurement of all the sides added up. And all the sides are going to have the same length. So, because that's the definition of a square, right? Parallel sides that have the same length. Sets of parallel sides that have the same length, that come together at right angles. So let's not get into geometry here. Sorry, I don't want to get sidetracked. But sometimes they'll use geometry in the examples like that and just assume you know what they're talking about. Like you got to know some aspects of like what a square is and what a perimeter is. But so if all these sides are of equal length, all we have to do is divide the total length of those sides, 14 4/10, by 4, and we will have the side of each side of the square, the length of each side of the square. So let me just set it up and work it out. 14 4/10 divided by 4. How many times does 4 fit into 1? It does not fit into 1, so nothing will go there. Let's put the decimal point down right there. Go over one place. How many times does 4 fit into 14? Well, 4 times 3 is 12. So it'll go in there 3 times. 3 times 4, 12. but there's some left over. There's 2 left over. Bring down the next number and we get 24. How many times does 4 fit into 24? Fits in there 6 times exactly. 6 times 4 is 24. And we're done. With the decimal point being where it is, going right up above where it is in the dividend, the answer is 3 6/10. So to just eject the decimals out of here and go back to whole numbers for a second, if we're just doing how many times does 4 fit into 144? Well, if it doesn't fit into 1 here, it's kind of like saying 4 doesn't go into 144 at least 100 times. It's going to fit in there, but not as many as 100 times, because that's the hundreds place. We go over to the tens place, and we know 4 fits into 14 3 times. So it's sort of like saying that 4 fits into 144 at least 30 times. At least 30 times. Because 30 times 4 is going to be 120, right? It fits in there at least 30 times. 144 minus 120 is 24. It fits in there 120 times, but maybe a few more. There's a remainder of 24, and 4 does fit into 24 a few times. It fits in there 6 times. So we can get rid of that 0 and put in a 6 and get 36. This is just sort of like my thought process about long division. Sort of this is what's behind the shortcut of doing long division in this way. And like I mentioned earlier, you'll see in the K-12 lessons, sometimes they put zeros there and then erase them and replace them with other numbers like that later. But let's move on to another example, maybe get a little tougher. Oh, I've been forgetting to estimate. What's the total cost for 5 pounds of chicken? Okay, no, the total cost for 5 pounds of chicken is $26.25. What's the cost of 1 pound? So if that's 5 pounds, we got to divide that by 5 to get the cost of 1 pound. I'm thinking, sorry, didn't mean to flip to the answer. I'm thinking the answer is going to be around 5 because I know 25 divided by 5. I know just from memorizing the multiplication table that that's going to be 5. So it should be around 5. If you get something like 50, then you'll know you might have made a mistake with your decimal point. So set it up 2625 divided by 5. How many times does 5 fit into 2? It doesn't fit into 2, so nothing going to be in that place. How many times 5 fit into 26? 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Again, we're sort of ignoring the decimal point. We're just sort of copying it above the long division bar and just proceeding with regular long division. So 26 minus 25 is going to be 1. Bring down that 2. How many times 5 fit into 12? 2 times. 5 times 2 is 10. 12 minus 10 is 2. Bring down the 5. 5 fits into 25 5 times exactly. 5 times 5 is 25. And we are finished. So it did come out to be close to the estimate. Okay, let me see. 13 minutes. Got time for one more, I think. Let's try this one. Yeah. Here it gets to be a little bit more difficult. 50 cents divided by 125. Here you're going to get a really small number because 125 doesn't really fit into 50 cents, does it? I'm going to call it 50 cents. It just looks like money to me because of the way it goes out into the hundredths place. But you should get a really tiny answer. 125 is only going to fit into 5 tenths or 51 hundredths, a fraction of a time. It's going to be very small. So I will set it up. It's divided by 125, so that goes over here. 0.50, I'll put the decimal point right above. How many times does 125 fit into 0? It doesn't fit in there any times. How many times does 125 fit into 5? It doesn't fit in there any times. How many times does 125 fit into 50? No times, right? We have to add a 0. for this one. We have to add a 0 and think, well, how many times does 125 fit into 500? I know it fits into 500 a few times, right? You could do some scratch work on the side to try to figure this out. Let's say we think it only fits in there 3 times. 125 times 3, 375. I think it might fit in there a 4th time. If you think maybe you could fit in another 125, you can just try adding 125 to that. And we get 500 exactly, because 125 times 4 is 500 exactly. So 4 is going to be what goes here. 4 times 125 is 500. And that's it. We're done with that, but we had to add a 0. So it only fits in there 4 thousandths of a time. Very small number. And I've gone over 15 minutes, but that's okay. Just means I have to upload this to YouTube instead of a screencast. Okay, well let's try. Let me just look through these examples for another good one. All these slides are in the OneNote. Everything we're looking at here is in the OneNote. This is what we had set up as a success ticket. 79 2/10 divided by 9. These ones are all very similar to what we just did. Here's one where you have to add a couple zeros. Yeah, this might be a good one to do. 92 7/10 divided by 12. So 12 is a divisor. 92 7/10 is the dividend. How many times does 12 fit into that number? Well, 12 fits into 92. I know it fits into 92 a few times. This is the point. This is when we come to something like this in long division. Even I sometimes have to do scratch work on the side because I kind of forget what times 12 times what gets me close to 92. I might do something like, well, 12 times 8. Maybe that's it. Okay, let's try that. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 1 is 9. 96. Wow, that's a little bit, that's one too many, right? If 12 times 8 is 96, that's just a few over 92, so it's probably 7. It definitely fits in there 7 times. What's 12 times 7? 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. We get 84. So yeah, let's use a different color here. Let's put a 7 there. 7 times 12 is 84. And we know it doesn't fit in there 8 times because we just saw that 12 times 8 is 96. Okay, so 12 fits into 92 7 times with a remainder of a few. 92 minus 84 is 8, right? If we borrow from the 9, make that an 8, make that a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. Bring down the 7. Got my Galaxy pen here. How many times does 12 fit into 87? Well, we just figured out that 12 times 7 is 84. So I think it's going to be 7 again, right? And let's make sure our decimal point's there. It's got to be lined up very neatly. 7 times 12 is going to be 84 again. 87 minus 84 is 3, but we don't want to have a remainder. You don't, when you're putting your answer in the form of a decimal, you don't want a remainder. If you say 7.7 with a remainder of 3, that's just a little bit unusual. So we want to bring it out another digit. Let's put a 0 here. How many times does 12 fit into 30? Well, 12 times 1 is 12. You go 12, 24, 36. So 12 times 3 is 36. It must be 2. 12 times 2 is 24. 30 minus 24 is 6. So we still have a remainder. Let's bring out another 0. Now you will encounter some dividing problems where you might be going on and on and on, getting a whole bunch of digits here. But I promise you in this lesson, you're not going to run into any that have you going on more than a couple digits. They will end or start to repeat very shortly here. So 12 fits into 60. Well, I know 12 times 5 is 60. 12 times 5 is 60 exactly, I think, right? 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. Yeah, so it comes to an end right here. 5 times 12 is 60, and then we don't have any more remaining, so the problem is done. It's 7 and 725 thousandths. So I guess that's one of the more challenging ones. No, I think that should do it. I wanted to keep this video short. These are baby otters, by the way, baby otters. um, Anyway, guys, if you have the entire lesson to work through, page by page, work through it carefully. Okay, go to the OneNote and look at the Khan Academy videos, especially if you're struggling with just doing the regular long division. Okay, that'll be it then. I will have a great weekend, guys. If you're watching this when you're supposed to on Friday the 4th, and we'll see you later.